Recently I had the idea to revisit some recordings I did 15 years ago, with a main focus on the drum recordings. And this can be very interesting for you in case you sometimes feel the need to record an acoustic drum set in a very simple way. You know, like simply in the rehearsal room with using a mic for the bass drum and for the snare, maybe one or two overheads. And we are going to check out how it actually sounds, what comes through such overheads, and also how we can deal with all the microphone bleed. And I can tell you that I'm very excited myself to see how it turns out in the end, because what's going on here in my track is pretty wild. So welcome to the Ground Noise. Make sure to do all the good things to support the channel. Thank you very much, and now let's start. So this is what we are dealing with today. All these orange or yellowish parts are my drum parts that I've recorded 15 years ago for a track called Mars Landing, which I wrote somewhere in the 90s when the first rover landed on Mars. So it's dedicated to that. Good, before we listen to a short part of this rough mix here with the guitar and the bass, so that you have an idea what the song is about. And I only want to tell you that I removed all the effects from the drum parts. So this is really the stuff that how it came in from the microphones, okay? No effects. I bypassed everything I did here a long time ago, and I also bypassed all the equalizers. Crazy stuff is going on here. It's really exciting to see after such a long time, and it looks quite experimental, to be honest. But okay, that's nothing to worry about. Now let's have a listen to a short piece of this song, Mars Landing. So this is the intro or main riff, and I think it doesn't sound too bad when we just listen to the drums. Let's do that, just listen to the drums. I have routed everything into a drum group except for the rack and floor toms, but I think we will need to make more groups for the snare and for the hi-hats and the kick drum, of course. So mixing is much easier that way. We will look at that in a minute. Just listen to the soloed drums. Good, there's no editing going on, by the way. This is really live playing, live drumming. But now let's make more groups for all the drum parts here, the single instruments, and let's go through all the parts and also listen to the bleed. Now this is going to the drum group, and I call this kick, and I can duplicate that 2 times. The first one is snare, and the next one I call metal. Okay, now we have more groups for the single instruments. I have 2 microphones for the bass drum. One microphone, kick 1, is inside the bass drum. You can already hear that we have some bleed. The snare is coming through. I don't think that is a problem, to be honest. This is another bass drum mic outside in front of the bass drum. So I also use 2 microphones on the snare. One comes from above and the other comes from below. So when you have 2 microphones recording the same sound source, like a snare drum for example, and the microphones look at each other, they're positioned like this and not like this, okay, they look at each other, you get phasing problems. And to explain it in a very easy way, phasing makes the signal very weak. It's bad. And you don't want that for the snare drum, for sure. But there is no other way to record a snare from above and below when you need both signals. So you have to reverse the phase of one track of one of the microphones. And you can do it like that in Cubase. Just select the part and go to audio processes. This is a menu we need very often. And here it is, invert phase. I think I accidentally said reverse phase or something like that. You know what I mean? Invert phase, and when you click on that, everything is good. And both microphones start adding up on each other, which makes the sound very strong. And that's the reason you're using two microphones, right? Let me quickly route them together into one group, into the snare group, like that. And there is the hi-hat, and the hi-hat goes to the metal group, as well as the ride down here, and the two overheads. And about my toms, I'm using 5 toms, 3 rack toms and 2 floor toms. And my setup, you notice it here in the project, how they are named. It's pretty different than most drummers would do it. So my 10-inch, my small tom, rack tom is in front of me. And to the left of it is a 12-inch tom. And to the right of the middle is the 13-inch tom. And to my left, really left of my hi-hat, is my 14-inch floor tom, and on my right side the 15-inch floor tom. And I'm also using 2 hi-hats, one on the left, of course, the main hi-hat, and a trash hi-hat that makes a trashy sound that I really love on my right side. And I'm still very proud that I'm one of the last drummers who uses a real ride cymbal. And I have many cymbals, not many cymbals, a few splash cymbals, 2 crashes. At that time I had a shiner type and something else I can't remember. So this is a Drumpart only with overheads and hi-hat and ride microphone. It sounds really trashy, to be honest, and not really direct. So this is good enough for a demo, a quick demo or whatever. But if you want to record an acoustic drum set a bit more seriously, I really recommend to also add a kick drum and snare drum microphone. But I also think the way you mic your drum set and record your drum set is pretty much depending on the music style as well. Because this is more like big drum kit and expressive drumming, progressive rock type of thing. But if you're just making just a quietly singer-songwriter folk song, something like that, a quick demo or something, don't worry about the miking. Just go for the overheads and a microphone for the kick and for the snare. And I think you can work with that. And now that we've sorted everything nicely into groups, it should be much easier to come up with a better drum sound, to beautify everything. And the best way to beautify things is to work with a very good equalizer. And most of the time I'm using just the equalizer here in the channel strip in Cubase. But now that we have all the groups, I don't touch the single tracks, but I will focus on the groups and also start with the main bass, the drum bass. And at the frequency EQ, this is a very, very powerful EQ by Steinberg. And I prepared a little preset here. You can see that I boosted the bass quite a lot, and I also reduced this area here around like 700 Hertz. And then I've added some frequency here in the treble area and also applied a low cut and a high cut filter. So let's listen to the drum part again and also bypass the EQ here, and then I switch it on so we can hear the difference. So it's way more beefier with the EQ because it has more bass, and I also try to make it a little bit smoother in the mid area, not so trashy and crashy. Let's reduce the output gain here. And of course, there is much more bass going on and some more treble. But you always want to avoid these red numbers here. I think I better go to -3 just to make sure. But in a real mixing process, you check that all the time. You make a little change somewhere else and suddenly you have a clipping going on. Okay, I think the drum sound is much warmer now and not so trashy and crashy like I've said before. But it's still not very precise and direct sounding. So we really need to focus more on the kick drum and the snare drum. And maybe it's also the right time to talk about microphone bleed. What is microphone bleed and is it a problem? Microphone bleed means everything that comes through a microphone that's not supposed to be there. Of course, the kick drum microphone is supposed to record only the kick drum sound, but we also can hear some of the snare coming through. And toms. Not so much the hi-hats and cymbals. And the snare microphone does the same. So we hear the snare, but we also hear a little bit of the other things. So the big question is this a bad thing and is it a big problem? And if yes, how can we solve this problem? But I never really liked that super dry, super clean early 80s studio, Los Angeles studio sound of drums, okay? I know that you can hear everything, every detail, but sometimes it's really sounding very unnatural to me and super small. But of course, that's a matter of taste, and I'm just showing you, that's all I can do, just showing you my point of view and my music. So I think that's the first decision you have to do when you record a drum kit like that. Is it really a bad thing with all the bleed? And of course it depends on the size of your drum kit as well. When you have a very small drum kit with one rack tom, one floor tom, one cymbal, one ride or whatever, it's much easier to handle than this big drum set I have here. But anyway, in this case here we can say we have quite a few parts that are really noisy, like all the overhead parts and the ride and the metal parts here, the metal tracks. So why not trying to make the kick drum a bit clearer? And for that I go into the group and I load a noise gate. So we only need to make sure that the noise gate doesn't delete some strokes. So I have no eject time, no hold, whatever, and I go for auto release in this case because I think it's doing a really good job here in this track. It's a wild track. I sometimes played like very syncopated stuff, fast strokes with double bass and 30-second notes, something like that. It's very wild, and I find it very hard to come up with a release time that fits all of these situations. And auto release is doing a good job. And now I play around with this button here, the analysis RMS or peak. Yeah, I really recommend just to play with the thing. I think we go for peak. It makes more sense, I think. But you also can just play with the button here and listen to it, of course. Always listen to it. And we don't need sidechain. And now I'm trying to play with the threshold here and the range as well. I go for minus 25 dB in this case. The problem is that you don't want to delete some bass drum strokes, okay? So thinking about the noise gate is even more important for the snare part, because I play many ghost notes on the snare drum, and it's really bad if you delete them by accident, by wrong use of the noise gate. It destroys the whole part in the whole groove. It makes no sense. You hear all the ghost notes, right? And to make everything more transparent here and more direct, we need a compressor. And let's try the black valve compressor here in Cubase, which I think is a pretty good one. Let's focus on the snare. And I think the black valve compressor sounds even better on the kick drum. Oh, and I forgot to remove all the equalizers here, the low and high cut filters in the channel strip of the new group tracks here. How does it sound now? Okay, we can look into the equalizers of the kick drum maybe. Just give me the kick drum. And the idea is to remove frequencies that really don't belong, or that doesn't add any value to the bass drum sound in this case. So you might think the bass drum sound is bass, okay, it's bass drum. Of course, we can make it a little bit more beefy, that's for sure, but you also need some treble on the bass drum, so let's try to find some good spots here. I think I go 60. And this high click sound is what you're looking for when you're going for a heavy bass drum sound, okay? It's not only bass, it also has this hard attack sound. I personally like it very much when bass drums do it like that, especially in a bit of heavy song like, or heavy rocking song like this one. So I went for 2000 Hertz and raised it for 6 dB. And now let's focus on the lower area here, the lower frequencies. So this area around 220 Hertz sounds a bit ugly in my ears, and maybe it's a good idea to reduce this frequency. Maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, only do things that matter. When you hear no difference, then don't do it. And also raise the bass. It's clearer, no? I really think this is the sweet spot here. So let's go on with the snare. I want to give it more bite and make it sound more into the face. So here we go. You can see here is the body of a snare, right? But that area is already strong enough, I think, so we don't need to raise it. Again, let's focus on the treble. Oh. So I spotted two areas that were very interesting. The first one is at 1400 Hertz. This was the ugly area where it sounded almost like there was a flanger or something going on. So maybe we can reduce this area here, this spot. And also there was a very high area at 4000 Hertz. I didn't expect that, to be honest, which sounded very nice. Just like in most of my videos, it's slowly getting dark outside, and because this process takes very long, not like forever, but it takes very long. You have to put in some time and effort, you know. But it's worth it. It already sounds much better than in the beginning. What I want to do now is to add a little bit of reverb to the drum bass. And for that I try out the Revelation reverb here in Cubase. So let's turn down the mix factor here, like 15. Well, I'm still not too sure about it. I have to play around with the plugin a little bit more, and yeah, because it's it's not a new plugin, but I ignored it for a few years and discovered it just recently. And we could do much more with this part here, like going through all the parts and removing bleed manually. Of course, there are also very helpful tools in Cubase. But when it comes to editing, always ask yourself how far you want to go. Is it really necessary to flatten everything out and make everything super clean, super dry, remove all the noises, and then you start quantizing and removing all the human mistakes, you know? And to come to a good decision here, I think it's really important to look at the whole project and not only the drum part in that moment. You must look at the whole project. Where is it coming from? What was the intention? What's the song about? What are the other instruments doing? And who knows, maybe I come to the conclusion that the song, how I recorded it 15 years ago, was totally fine and in the moment, in a snapshot of the time. And it's quite pointless to try to change it into something else, into a modern version or whatever, only because I have more experience, more knowledge, better equipment right now. But at least it's very interesting to look into the old projects here and the old files. And it's much fun to play around with the drum sound. And I hope you enjoyed the video as well. Let me know in the comments what you think. Also, please don't forget to do all the good things. My name is Markus. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon in the next one.